Hey guys, welcome back to another set of notes. We're going to be working on still chapter 1. We're in lesson 3 though, and we're going to talk about rates. So rate is kind of like a ratio, except for in a ratio it's the same label. With a rate, it's different labels. So we're going to talk about a couple different types of rates. So let's go ahead and first one, let's talk about a rate in general. Give you a definition. So it's a ratio, so we're going to use either the word to or a colon or a fraction, reduced to lowest terms. And it's a ratio comparing two quantities, so two different types of things, with different kinds of units. So think about miles per hour, feet per second, tablespoons per cup, whatever, okay? So that's a rate. Now, what's more interesting is something called a unit rate. So think about what unit are, or units are, like the units are the ones column. So this is us taking a rate and making the denominator equal to 1. Now, why this is important is sometimes we can make a better judgment on what's a better deal if we know the cost of one item. Let's say you get like I'm looking at a Duraflame box right now, and it had 6 logs in it, and it cost me $19.99. So without tax. So my question is that a better deal than buying a box of 4 at $14.99, the kind that crackle? And the answer is, well, if I do some math, I can figure out. If I know how much it costs for each log, then I'm going to know which one of those 2 boxes is a better deal. So the definition of, we'll just call, I don't know why I wrote a plural on that one. Let's just make it unit rate. So a unit rate is when the rate is written as a fraction. So we have no choice on this one. And most of the time I say rates are usually written as fractions. Its denominator, so when a ratio is written as a fraction, its denominator has a value of 1 unit. Okay, so instead of figuring out, that they went 360 miles in 5 hours, my question is how many miles did they go in 1 hour? That would be a unit rate, okay? So let's compare a ratio, which we already talked about, to a rate, and then to a unit rate. Okay. So in a ratio, we have numbers only. There's no labels. And the reason why there's no labels is because the labels are the same and they cancel each other out. So you would have feet over feet, so there would be no label. So for example, we would have 15 over 5, okay? Now, you would probably say, Ms. Rosner, you forgot to do something. We're supposed to reduce ratios to lowest terms. You're right. But for this purpose, we're going to keep those numbers the same because I want you to see how they change when they become a rate and a unit rate, okay? So how is a rate different from a ratio? Well, it adds units. So what are you measuring in? What are the labels, okay? So that 15 is represented by characters, and the 5 represents seconds. So characters in this particular case is somebody's typing on a keyboard, and they are doing 15 characters. Now, not words necessarily, but they're just typing, okay? So they can get 15 things done in 5 seconds. So that leads us to the unit rate, where we're going to get the denominator equal to 1. So we're going to divide top and bottom by the denominator number. It's always whatever that denominator is, okay? And then that takes us to the unit rate. So we're going to divide numerator by denominator. And that will give us 1. So we're basically dividing both of them by the same thing. So that would end up giving me 15 divided by 5 is 3 characters. So they can do 3 keys. And 5 divided by 5 is 1 in 1 second. That's done, right? Okay. Now there's a variation on unit rate, and that variation is called a unit price. So when I go shopping, I like to look at the unit price, okay? So sometimes I'm trying to figure out what's the better deal, and there's a lot of factors, but one of them is, well, how much am I actually paying per unit? So if I have a 48-ounce jar, if I can figure out how much it costs for 1 ounce, then I can compare that to a 36-ounce jar and see which one's better. Now, of course, in my case, I also consider, will we eat it up before it spoils? Okay, because there's just the 2 of us eating it. So this is going to be the cost, which is money, and then it's per 1 unit. So a lot of times it's per ounce. It could be per pound. Like, salmon is sold per pound. So you can either get the butcher to do it for you, or they sell pre-packages or pre-made packages of the salmon. So you're trying to figure out which one has the better deal per pound. Okay. So just to write this down, unit rate. So that may not involve money, like we had the characters in seconds. And unit price. And unit price, so that's the one that has to include money on the top, can be solved by division. Let's do that. I'm going to put it over here. So, for example, I found that in the 15 characters per 5 seconds, that I said, oh, they both have a 5 in common, so I divided that out, and that got me down to 1 second in the denominator and 3 characters in the numerator. But what I could have done, instead of looking for like the greatest, well, that wouldn't be the greatest common factor, it would be whatever the denominator was, I could simply just do long division. 5 goes into 15 3 times with no remainder. And then I would say 3 characters. So I take that quotient per, and then since I'm dividing both of them, it would be 1 always in the denominator. So both unit rate and unit price can work that way. Okay. All right, we got some examples on the other page. So I'm thinking you might want to write these down. I'm going to turn off and then turn it back on, so you might want to do the same thing so you're not wasting time just watching me write. Okay, so here's our first example. Alma downloaded 35 songs in 5 minutes. How many songs did she download per minute? Okay, so we're going to start with writing it kind of somewhat in a ratio as a fraction. So we're going to start with 35 songs in the numerator and 5 minutes in the denominator. So you can see that it's a rate because the labels aren't the same. So that means the labels stay with the answer. And they want to go per minute. Per minute. So per means to divide, and minute is talking about 1 minute. So my question is, how do I get my minutes to become 1 minute? Because that's what it's asking for. So you think, well, wait a second, that's pretty easy. I'm just going to divide 5 by 5 to become 1. So whatever I do to the numerator, or denominator, I do to the numerator. So 35 divided by 5 is 7. So I get 7 songs per minute. So then I write that answer as a sentence. Elma downloaded 7 songs, and we interpret the division symbol as per minute. I don't have to say per 1 minute, just per minute. Box it up, and there I go. Now I'm ready for the next one. So this next problem gets a little bit trickier. It says, Jonathan is baking several loaves of bread to sell in his bakery. He used 9 cups of water and 12 cups of whole wheat flour. How much water was used per cup of water, or cup of flour? Good thing I read that out loud. I'm like, what do you mean water again? This word should be flour. Okay. How much water was used per cup of flour? All right, so what I need to do is to pay attention to the question and the order of the words that it listed. So it says per cup of flour. So I'm going to divide by flour. So when I write things down, the water is going to go on top because it said how many cups of water. So we're going to do the water on top. So 9 cups of water divided by 12 cups of flour. And that makes sense that you use more water than you do flour. Otherwise, you'd have like flour soup, which, by the way, I've had in Switzerland, and it actually is pretty tasty. It's kind of like having gravy soup. I know, it sounds gross, but if you're skiing, it's fantastic. Okay, so now what they want us to do is to get that denominator to equal 1. So I'm going to show you a way to do that. So again, my goal is to get my denominator to be 1 cup of flour. So this is going to look a little funny. So I know to get to 1 cup of flour from 12 cups, I'm going to have to divide by 12. But then I'm going to also divide by 12 my numerator. So this is what it's going to look like. 9 divided by 12, and the label would be cups of water. Okay. Now notice that that fraction can get reduced. Okay, so that both have a 3 in common, so I'm going to divide out a 3 for each of those. And so what I'm going to end up getting is that there's 3/4 cup of water per 1 cup of flour. And that's what I'm going to write as my answer. So Jonathan used 3/4 cups of water per each cup of flour. So that's a different way of saying 1 is the word each. Okay, and some of you might be saying, well, why didn't I just do 9 divided by 12 and 12 divided by 12 a different way? Why didn't I just go, well, 9 and 12 have a 3 in common? But that would have given you a 3 on the top and the 4 on the bottom, but the goal is to have 1 on the bottom. So we could have taken that fraction and we could have shoved it into the numerator. So I am going to make a little notation here that we divided top and bottom by 3. And that's how we got the 3/4 cup. All right, the last one I wanted to do was a unit price, so you can see that. So this one's pretty short. So we have example 3, 4 identical potted plants cost $88. What is the price per plant? So identical wants to give you the impression that the cost for each of the plants is exactly the same thing. Okay, so that's what that's there for. And notice what it says over here. It says price per plant. So we're going to put the price, the cost, on top. So that's the $88. And then we're going to put the number of plants on the bottom. And in the beginning it said there were 4. So we're going to say 4 plants. But remember what our goal is. Our goal is to get the denominator to be per plant. So that means 1 plant. So what am I going to do to get from 4 to 1? I'm going to divide by 4. So whatever I do to the denominator, I'm going to do to the numerator. So 88 divided by 4 is going to give me 4 goes into 8 twice and into 8 twice. So I would conclude each plant, that's another way of saying 1 plant, costs $22. Or you could say the cost of 1 plant is $22. A lot of ways to write this answer. All right, there you go, guys. Good luck with this. Bye now.